the Global Energy Leaders Podcast, episode 68.
Welcome to the Global Energy Leaders Podcast, powered by R2 Global.
Welcome to another edition of the Global Energy Leaders Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Ray. So good to have you. Today, we get into bioenergy, and we bring on Dr. Michela Morese, who is the Natural Resources Officer at FAO and Executive Secretary of Global Bioenergy Partnership. We will link to their website in the show notes. They're doing a lot of interesting stuff here. They've tied up with the G8 and some other nations. I think now she said they have 77 total nations who are part of this. They're trying to bring energy, biopowered energy rather, to rural and undeveloped areas. So I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Dr. Morese. Without further ado, here's the conversation we had just the other day. Michela, it's so great to have you today. How's it going?
Very good, thank you. And you?
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're across the pond, as we like to say here in the U.S., and you're in Rome right now, and you were telling me offline it's rather hot over there, so you don't think of Rome, at least from the state side, as being hot. But let's kind of get to it. You're in energy. What drove you into getting into energy?
Well, actually, I had some working experience during the G8 summit preparation under the Italian Presidency. It was back in 2001, where climate change and energy were two of the main topics of that time. Then I was involved in the Ministry of the Environment, still with the government of Italy for many years, and my main focus were here again climate change and the negotiations of the UNFCCC, and also bioenergy. And then there was this request from the G8 in 2005 to establish an international initiative on bioenergy, because they realized that this kind of initiative was really missing, despite the key importance of bioenergy. And then I was involved in the creation of this initiative since mostly the beginning and its establishment in New York in 2006, and the establishment of the Secretariat based here in FAO in Rome. So this is how my life brought me to the bioenergy theme.
Okay, so you've mentioned the G8 there a few times, and so break down just for the audience real quick who all is in the G8, and then what is their role moving forward with this initiative?
So the G8 countries in 2005, the group of 8, the G8 is the group of 8 countries, the most developed countries in the world. They do meet every year, once a year, in a summit, heads of state and government summit, and they send recommendation to their own countries in order to facilitate sustainable development, energy security, food security, climate change mitigation and adaptation. And this was one of the requests of the recommendation of the G8 group in 2005. And that's from where the Global Bioenergy Partnership initiative comes. At the very beginning, the membership of the partnership was mostly responding to the G8 group, which is US, Japan, Italy, the UK, Canada, and Germany, and I can't remember the seventh.
Was France in there?
Yes. And so, at the very beginning, the membership of the partnership was very much responding to the membership of the G8 group, while year after year, the membership of the partnership enlarged a lot in order to reflect a lot more the G20 countries, and even more than the G20. So we now have around 77 members, partners, and observers within the Global Bioenergy Partnership. Most of these are countries, but also many are from international organizations like FAO or the International Energy Agency and others.
Right, and I noticed on the website here also Brazil, China, India, Mexico, and South Africa were also a part of this group in 2005. And it's important to bring that up because these countries have wide areas of population that don't have access to power, and also they don't have access to clean water and food. And one of the things I noticed when I was researching you is that you have a graduate certificate that deals with fundamental human rights. And I think one of the things with energy is we kind of forget that trying to get energy to people who don't have it, reliable, sustainable energy to people who don't have it, is something that kind of gets lost in this discussion over how do we get energy there. And I think part of the discussion needs to be is that we need to get energy there.
Oh yes, energy access is one of the key focus of the Global Bioenergy Partnership, together with also food security and sustainable development in general. So access to energy is very important, in particular in rural areas. We immediately think about Africa. And if we think about the fact that around 80% of the bioenergy used currently all over the world is used in a traditional manner. So it means in rural areas, taking wood residues and wood from the forest, unfortunately, in order to allow smallholders in the rural areas to cook and for cooking and heating in their rural houses. So this is why energy access in a more modern way is very important. And to do this, the efforts of the international community and the work of the Global Bioenergy Partnership in the sense of concentrating on sustainability and is on a sustainable development of bioenergy is extremely key, is the key, I would say.
And why do you think bioenergy is the key for these rural and developing areas?
Well, bioenergy could represent a diversification of their use of the land, of their use of their habits, of their daily habits. So just to give you a couple of examples. As I mentioned, so wood resources, wood is normally used in rural areas for cooking, for example. So this would improved ways, for example, what we call the improved cook stoves, could be used in these rural areas. Also, the respiratory diseases due to the indoor air pollution, due to the use of wood in the houses, would reduce a lot. And so the rural population would benefit a lot from the use of improved bioenergy, more modern use of bioenergy. That's one example. On the other side, from a energy access, but also from a food security perspective, we have examples where bioenergy has represented an opportunity for rural development, for sustainable development. For example, we have a case of a project developed by FAO a few years ago in Tanzania, where there was a small village where cassava was produced. And cassava was initially produced only as a food source. But then we did a study and we realized that cassava, also used for bioenergy purposes, would have represented an opportunity in order to improve income for the rural population, and therefore improve their welfare and their food security capacity. So the capacity to buy more food on the market because of the income generation due to the use of cassava for energy purposes. So you see very different kinds of support that bioenergy could represent for rural populations.
And so if I understand the argument correctly, then what you're saying is that bioenergy is the fastest and makes the most sense just because of the state of economic development these areas are in. And so you're saying, hey, instead of going out and building a large power plant, there's not enough need for that, or trying to get a pipeline, or maybe a microgrid solution is in, what you're saying is we can use resources that are already on the ground with little effort compared to maybe some of these longer lead projects, and we can go ahead and begin the process of getting power to these people.
Well, unfortunately, it's not so easy in the sense that bioenergy is a very complicated sector because it's very cross-cutting, and so it's not always good, it's not always bad. it presents indeed opportunities and challenges, and the key is to take out the best from the opportunities. And this is only possible through an accurate sustainability assessment of the bioenergy pathway. So it means that it's not always so quick to say, let's go directly for bioenergy. It's important to assess if the sustainability is well achieved, and if so, it indeed represents an opportunity and therefore a benefit for the local population.
Okay, well that's helpful, and that's good to hear, because now what I'm hearing is that you're saying that, hey, look, bioenergy doesn't actually work 100% of the time, but when it does work, we want to use it there. So you're not trying to force it where it's not maybe the most economical way, but you are trying to find areas where you can be opportunistic and bring your initiative there. Is that maybe a better way to describe it?
Indeed. And also, because you mentioned the economic viability, it's important to highlight that the sustainability sphere, let's say, that we define, it's made up of assessments under the 3 pillars of sustainable development. So assessment related to the environmental, the social, and the economic aspects of sustainability. So all the three aspects of sustainability really represent the basis for a sustainability assessment for the bioenergy pathways, for example.
Okay, and so let's just kind of walk through this process real quick. Let's say that you find an area and you do your sustainability report and you say, yeah, this is an area that we think it will work for our program. Is your initiative to say, okay, bioenergy is a 10, 20, 30-year solution? Or are you trying to say that bioenergy may be just a short-term solution where it's maybe 3 to 5 years, and then from there we want to transition to maybe solar or natural gas or some other type of energy?
Well, we do something slightly different in the sense that the Global Bioenergy Partnership represents an initiative of mutual cooperation among its members. And one of the objectives of this initiative is to facilitate exchange of information and lessons learned. So it means that what we do, not only we discussed in order to agree on a set of sustainability indicators for bioenergy. So we developed in 2011, after a 3-4 year discussion process, we developed a set of 24 sustainability indicators that, if measured over time, possibly in a country, the results of this measurement of the sustainability indicators will represent important information for policymakers in order for them to modify their national policies in order to be more sustainably wise, let's say. That's on one side. On the other side, still because the partnership represents a platform where to exchange lessons learned and experiences, we also do a lot of activities in terms of capacity development. So, for example, we do facilitate exchange of lessons learned, of best practices in different areas of the world in order to facilitate the flowing of information to policymakers on the challenges and on the opportunities of bioenergy in their specific area. Maybe I could make a practical example. So we've been working a lot in the ECOWAS region, which is the western part of North Africa. It's a region formed by 15 countries. And we started working there, if I'm not wrong, around 2010, 2011. And the idea of this work was in order to familiarize ministries of energy, of agriculture, and of environment of these 15 countries to bioenergy in terms of both opportunities, but also in terms of challenges. And the idea of familiarizing these ministries was also the idea for them to be more propositive about the opportunity to include bioenergy in their policies as an opportunity if managed sustainably. And all this discussion, all this dialogue brought to develop the GBEP supported the ECOWAS countries to develop a regional strategy on bioenergy, which is now a binding strategy in the region, and each of the 15 countries of the ECOWAS region are supposed to absorb these regional strategy into their national laws. So this is also a kind of policy support activity that we do within the partnership.
Well, and one thing is I want to plug your website here, globalbioenergy.org. There is a ton of information here. I'm just playing around right now. You have a toolkit, you have a program of work where you talk about sharing information. You've said that several times, and there's a lot of information here on the website for the listeners to go and to check out. Now, I was looking that you guys have an upcoming workshop. I believe it's in end of November, early December. Can you tell us what that's about?
Oh, yes. So those these meetings at the end, towards the end of the year, represent what we call the GBEP regular meetings. So we do have the partnership is formed by a steering committee, which is the governing body of the partnership, and members of the steering committee are each of the GBEP partners and observers. And then we have the other technical groups, like the Task Force on Sustainability, that deals with the sustainability indicators that I mentioned before, and the Working Group on Capacity Building, that deals with different activity groups on different aspects of capacity building, capacity development. So in November, there will be the regular meetings of the steering committee and of the two technical bodies of the partnership.
Okay, well, that's great. And we will link to that in the show notes. That's globalbioenergy.org. This website is just chock full of information. There's links to other organizations. There's an analytics tool. There's financing options. There's programs of work where they've got all kinds of information. Is there anything else that you'd like to plug or promote before we let you go today?
Let's say that maybe what I could mention is that we have very recently had one of the annual meeting that we organized to facilitate sharing of lessons learned and best practices. This was in Africa. We did this, what we call the Bioenergy Week in Africa a couple of weeks ago. It was held in Accra in Ghana, and it was the objective of this event was to exchange lessons learned and best practices on bioenergy topics that represents a topic that represents a priority for that specific region and for Africa in general. So, and these events represent one of a series of events that started in 2013. Every year we organize these bioenergy weeks in a different region of the world. So this year, as I said, it was in Africa. Next year it will be in Latin America, in Argentina. And so year after year, we touch the different regions of the world in order to discuss bioenergy in light of the priorities of that specific region. So this is an additional capacity development activity that we do in the context of our working group on capacity building.
Absolutely. Well, we will link to globalbioenergy.org. Again, the show notes so the listeners can check it out. Thank you so much for coming on. Really enjoyed this. Look forward to catching up with you again in the future to hear more about what you guys have going on.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Michela, thanks again for coming on. Really enjoyed the discussion today, and we look forward to having you on again after y'all's steering committee meeting here in just a few months. Be sure to check out the website, globalbioenergy.org. That's globalbioenergy.org. We'll link to it in the show notes. The Global Energy Leaders podcast is produced by Michael Sims and Chris Prine. Chris Prine also serves as editor for the Global Energy Leaders podcast. Until next time, keep climbing.
Thanks for listening to the Global Energy Leaders podcast, powered by R2 Global.